Sounds good.
Hey guys, have you been struggling with a new relationship? Have you been having issues getting out of a long term relationship and hitting the dating scene? Well, we've got the guest for you. What's going on, guys? It's Patrick with Men's Health Unscripted, and I'm with Tamara, dating coach and expert. We're here to talk about all things men's dating. We have a lot of really fun topics to discuss with you today. But Tamara, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your knowledge and expertise with our audience. Tell us a little bit about yourself to kind of get an idea of your background and how you got into dating coaching.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. I just love your podcast and your audience. It's fantastic. And I help men. I'm a conscious dating and relationship coach for men. And what got me into that was my own personal tragedy. I fell madly in love with a guy, and 3 years in, we've got the wedding planned, and I find myself in our brand new home that's just been finished, devastated. I realized, oh my gosh, we're not going to make it. Our four children who are best friends are going to be just traumatized. We are going to lose everything. We are going to have to start over. And it was because he had a breakdown. And this is one of the reasons I love your podcast. And he wouldn't get help. He wouldn't go to the doctor, take meds, seek therapy. He had a breakdown, and all the love and care. And I know this as a counselor and a coach. I know you can only love someone through it. You can't actually help them make progress. They have to want to heal and get help. And so there I was, left with nothing, completely starting over for the second time because I have been divorced too. And so really just trying to help men and women not ever have to go through how I felt, just to have the tools to prevent that, which I've developed now. So you never get to that point of devastation and that level of trauma and heartbreak, especially with children involved. So after I healed, I took the time to heal and started dating. There's so many amazing men sitting on the bench. I'm like, okay, I'm going to help men because these guys are just amazing partners for women, but it's just not working out. They're getting friend zoned. The women feel like they're too nice, or the men feel like they're in the exact same type of relationship that they had before they're split, or they're seeing a pattern with their exes. And so just to try to help them break out of that cycle and that pattern and really start to attract the women they actually want to date and have something special with.
Well, that's interesting. I'm definitely glad you're here to discuss this. That's quite a story, and I'm happy to see that you use that negative situation to create some positivity in your life and now radiating it out to others. A lot of that doesn't happen enough, and as you probably know, it's probably very easy to get caught up in a negative mindset, especially after a relationship where you feel like you've given your heart and everything to someone and you're just not quite getting out of it maybe what you put in or even what you expect. And I think there's a lot of things to discuss there. But let's kind of move right in. I think this has been a
Yeah.
hot topic before. What's the difference between a nice guy and a kind guy? I know a while back we kind of covered this, but and there's definitely some differences. And I think that maybe
Mm-hmm.
even creating this distinction can help guys. Let's talk about shifting them out of the friend zone. It's easy to get friend zoned. A lot of our viewers have discussed it. We see it on a lot of other posts and accounts. So let's discuss a little
Right.
bit about the difference of that.
So it's not just semantics. There is a big difference. And even though a woman might not be able to articulate it, she knows it right here on a subconscious level. And the number one thing a woman is looking for is safety. And so she feels safe with a kind guy, but not with a nice guy. And here's why. So a nice guy is going to do things he thinks will please other people, that he thinks other people want, right? Just to create peace and have a nice environment. And for people that are coming out of a really long-term relationship that was difficult, a lot of times, the guys that I've talked to had to surrender so much themselves, just like I did, to make that relationship work. And so they evolved into a nice guy. just to keep the peace and keep the household, kind of stable. And with children, you've got to work on that as much as possible. So they just fell into that role. A kind guy, though, is thinking about it with intention. When they get asked, do you want to be on this committee? Would you like to volunteer? They're going to stop and think. They're not going to say yes because it's going to please this person. They're going to think it through. Is this a priority? Do I have time? Will I still have time for my family, my loved ones, my significant other, my health, time to date, time to take, bills, shopping, mow the lawn, take care of life stuff so that they don't get so out of balance that they then lose track of what's important. So a woman feels safe with a kind guy because she knows he's really thinking about every decision. So it's just being conscious, being mindful of what you decide to do and not do. And then when she finds out that you're a kind guy, that builds trust because she knows then you're going to be honest. You're going to tell her the truth. Oh, I can't come over right now. I can't make it tonight, but I'd love to see you on Thursday. That builds a lot of trust because she knows if you're with her, you want to be. And when you say yes, you want to be there and you can be there without sacrificing all these other things. And a kind guy puts his loved ones first. So she feels safe about that too. She's not going to feel second.
Right. And,
Yeah.
I think this is a complex thing to discuss because
Mhm.
you
It
have
is.
guys who have careers and you still want to hang out with your buddies, and you have
Yeah.
kids, and the lady or your partner in your life is also kind of important, and being
Hmm.
able to structure those things where it's really a complex balancing act, because you got to make money, right? So you got to have your career. You have your loved ones, you have your kids that you have to take care of, and things like that. And even maybe if you're separated or divorced and now you have kids and a career and a new girlfriend or new partner or something like that, then that's a new balancing act that you're kind of taking on. And then
Right.
even the potential of having an ex where you have kids, that complicates things. So I think this is a really complex
Hmm.
balancing act. And
It
kind
is.
of, I know we can get into that, but I also kind of wanted to ask you too, the nice guy dynamic. We've heard a lot of different perspectives. Yours is actually kind of different than what we've discussed before, where previous dating expert would say that sometimes the nice guy dynamic can be manipulative. You're doing something for somebody and expecting
Yes.
something in return. So what are your thoughts on that before we move on? But is
I
that
can
something that you encounter a lot in your coaching?
I completely agree. And that's another reason why the woman doesn't feel safe because she knows you're not doing it because it's what's right or what's right for you or right for your family or right for the situation. You're doing it for these external reasons. And then your life starts to spin out because you don't have the balance. You don't have time for friends or your health or whatever you sacrifice in that nice guy decision. And she's tabulating all this subconsciously, right? Because our subconscious mind's driving the bus 95% of the time. But she'll just like kind of go, oh, yeah, we can't be a partner because all these external things are taking that role. And so we can't, it's hard to be best friends and have a partnership with that. I completely agree. It is manipulative to put it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And then,
seems where
yeah,
there it seems like in my own personal experience, not necessarily me, but I've seen other people that they try to manipulate a potential partner or somebody for whatever. So it's like, oh, hey, I'll buy you a donut. And it's like not really that genuine. I'm
right.
just using it as an example. It's an easy thing, but I'll buy you
Yeah,
this or I'll take you here. And I
right.
think it's easy for guys to get caught up in the friend zone because one, I mean, you're kind of you're giving up everything before really seeing if it's going to work. So it's like, I'll buy
Mhm.
you dinner, I'll take you out, I'll do this. And
Right.
while that the guy might think, well, I'm doing all these things for this lady or potential partner that I'm courting, you're kind of giving yourself up a lot, and you're not really leaving a lot to mystery, and you're not really letting somebody
Right.
get to know you. You're just kind of like forcing these scenarios on them. Is that kind of something you see, or am I hitting the nail on the head a little bit?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And another potential like where that could become that could be a childhood wound too, right? Again,
Sure.
the man is doing all this subconsciously too. I mean, some people really are so seeking that acceptance and that affirmation and validation from other people, that's how they learned to seek it when they were young. And again, they're just acting out of routine habit, their subconscious, and then now we're in this dangerous cycle, right? Because then there's a woman in their life or not, it does spin out. And so then what? How do you get your life back? But a lot of times they don't even know they're doing it. And so it could be, either one of those perspectives is just that it's a pattern. And so, what I love to help people do is break the pattern. If you're attracting women that, you know, she's the nice one. Part of the problem is your like masculine energy might be off. And so if you've had to be the partner in the relationship or the caretaker with the kids, and you've had to bring out your feminine energy so much more, or you're in a profession, you're a male therapist or a nurse that has to use that feminine energy a lot during the day, you could accidentally bring that forward on a date or in your relationship, and that gets you friend zoned. But also, if you forget to put your masculine energy back on, like when you walk out of work or when pass your kids off to your ex, if you forget to like put your energy back on, the true you, because all of us have masculine and feminine energy, and they're both really important. They're both
Sure.
really magical, and women want both from you. It's just that if you walked into a date with your feminine energy forward, then that makes things confusing. It puts the balance off, and then she's confused about, now do I need my masculine energy? And this is all just a vibe energy thing going on when you meet someone. It's, most people say it's chemistry, but it's really just, it just sets things off on a state of confusion. And that's why sometimes people just don't get back, get past like a first date. So it just murks things up. And then if you do wear your feminine energy more than not, you might have even more of a tendency to be a nice guy, because with your masculine energy that you have, you'd be more likely to say no, and
Right.
just in healthy ways, because it's really healthy to say no just as it is to say yes. You have to sit and think through what's being offered to you.
Sure. So I think that's a great space to transition into the balancing act we were talking about a couple minutes ago. There's a lot of things that balance, and you've even brought some more forward before we get into this discussion. So we have balancing the masculine and feminine energy. We have balancing kids, friendships, previous relationship if you do have kids. So there's a ton of things that go into dating. It's not just saying like, hey, can I take you out on a
Right.
date? Especially if you have other things that are very important. If you are working your way up in a career or something like that, business owners. I mean, there's a million different reasons. So let's kind of talk about how men can establish a good balance in their lives that make them available for dating, but also available for all the other things that are important to them as well. I think anybody can say, I mean, if you get lost in a relationship,
Mm-hmm.
it's not really super fulfilling because you have all these other things that you want to do. And it's like you're kind of window shopping all the fun stuff out there too. While a relationship is fun, I think two individuals coming together that still have their own hobbies and things that they enjoy make it so much more fruitful. So let's talk about the balancing act.
I think it's so conscious dating. I refer to myself as a conscious dating in relationship, because all of my practices, everything I teach is about being mindful. So, and this is a great example. So, sitting down with your schedule at a table in writing, like you're using a pencil,
Right.
and you're mapping out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So visually, a lot of us are visual, and you can see, this is how much time I have. This is how my time is spent. And then you consider your priorities. Are my priorities on this paper? A lot of times men have difficulty dating because they want to date, but they just legit don't have time yet. So it's clearing that out and making the time. So your custody is going to be on there. Your errands, if you're taking a class, work, your workout schedule. So, and time out with your friends, all that needs to be on there, in your family, right? The other people you love. But maybe the other things that you do, maybe instead of working out 6 days a week, you work out 4 or 5, right? That leaves one night free for time for family. And then it's just once you get it all mapped out, you can see where you could make time and make space. And then when somebody comes to you and says, I need your help with this, or can you volunteer? Can you serve on this board? Then you know you can't say yes. You see it, right? I really don't have time. And so making time for a woman, she will sense it if you don't have time. Like a woman will just ask you, do you even have time to date? And then if you're looking, the men I work with are after long-term relationships. And so making that time, because when you do find someone, you want to devote time to her. So for me, it's like an actual activity. You're sitting down, you're doing this exercise, and that way you do still have time for your friends and family and your children and all the things. Another thing I think that's really important is it's important to keep things balanced for your kids too. So when you have that time with your kids, take them on errands, take them to the store. Those are life skills you're teaching them. But a lot of guys are afraid that that's not quality time. It totally can be. You're teaching them about recipes, how to cook, what to buy, pricing, where to shop, how to go about it. Those are really important life skills. Plus, it's fun. Anything's fun if you're with the right people. And so you can horse around and play and have a great time with your children doing that or doing chores, right? Making that something fun when they're at your house. So it doesn't have to be full on dad time when your children are there. It can be real life too. And then you can, of course, just casually mention, like, oh, yeah, I have, plans with Samantha tomorrow night. And so they don't feel lied to if they find out later you're in love with someone and they didn't even know about her. So that's another type of balance. How much do I share with my children about my love life?
I definitely agree with you. It's something we haven't really talked about too much either, is teaching life skills. And, that's, and since we're talking men here, so a very fatherly thing to do. I know that my grandfather taught me a lot. He was a carpenter. I was
Hmm.
up on scaffolding, don't call OSHA, but I was up on scaffolding like when I was 10 years old. I was helping him fix stuff. I mean, I can legitimately say I have saved probably thousands of dollars just being able to repair things on my own, rather than having to call a plumber or something like that. And I think those skills are so important. I think a lot of people lose those skills, especially kind of now. There's so many services out there that you can just call somebody, pay to have it done. But
Right.
realistically, I'll never forget the times with my grandfather learning about, I mean, carpentry, plumbing, all of it. I mean, he was a very skilled tradesman. And I think like up until recently, I was still changing my own oil.
Hmm.
I got to the point where I can afford to not, right? And the time it takes to change your own oil versus taking it somewhere else and dealing with it later, it benefits me more now. But it's still a skill that I have. I can always, if I need to, something happens, I can definitely do that. So
Right.
let's kind of like talk a little bit about building those skills, those life skills a little bit. And then also I really like kind of how you frame that, is like it's not just quote unquote dad time. There's skill
Hmm.
building, and really a lot of these aspects that your kids pick up from you even after you're gone. They'll still remember, hey, dad was yelling at me holding the flashlight, right?
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
um
Well, and
so
my dad was in that line of work too. And so then you have all those precious memories. And he's like, climb that ladder, scrape that paint. And I'm like, okay, you just, get on the roof. Okay. I mean, it gives you the courage to do all the other things that come up in life, like approaching a woman, which is extremely intimidating. Well, you did all that scary stuff. I'm like, your whole life, if you really think about all the new crazy things that you've done and you conquered and you did it anyway. So I think that's really precious for your kids. And then we as adults get to kind of reflect on all those precious things that we built. Yes, it's really practical, but also it's like you think of it with fondness too. Like, wow, he took the time. It was time well spent. And, we laughed and joked and, made s'mores and, whatever.
sure.
All those other things camping and all those other fun things. Yeah. Yeah,
I,
I think
I, I mean, I think going to the grocery store and picking out food is a huge skill. I think it's a very underrated skill because what we put in our bodies is a lot of, what we are. Cam and I
right.
both deal with patients with chronic disease all the time, and some of it could be genetic. some of it's metabolic, and it's
Sure.
you know, things that have happened over time. So I mean, you can't really place it, but there are definitely preventable diseases out there that have to do with what we consume, what we eat, what we drink. So even teaching your kids that skill, like, hey, it's okay to have, you know, the ice cream and the cookies once in a while, but like we spend a lot of our time in the fruits and vegetables and like Whole Foods aisles, shopping around the store rather than the middle where all the processed foods are. I think
Right.
all of the and just creating a distinction of like, hey, this is good for you, this is bad for you, this is okay in moderation. But let's really try to stick to these things. I mean, that's going to have your kids growing up much healthier, much more aware of what they're putting in the body. And ultimately, I mean, we can even circle it back. You're much more ready for dating, right? It's a lot when you're
Hmm.
healthier, your mind is,
Right.
you know, a lot more stable. It's probably much easier to sit and make that schedule and date and just have a lot more awareness rather than worrying about potential diseases, taking medication, things like that. So, you know,
Right.
that's probably a whole different conversation for a different day,
Right.
but just a ton of really great skills can come out of just spending time with your kids and going about your day to day. Showing them how to go to the post office is huge.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Or even like my dad was a runner. So even with his busy schedule, he still made time for that. Because he knew it helped his mental health. He never said that, but I could see the impact that it had on him. So I would ride my bike. Like he would take me. And then I would have to ride my bike because I couldn't keep up with him. But again, more fond memories. And what did I learn from that? I learned that health is a priority, exercise is important. And even though I don't feel like I have time, I'm making the time. So it's teaching how to make time for what's important to you too.
Sure,
Yeah.
that's also a
And
valuable skill.
health is a huge part of dating because you want to go out and play and do things or kayak, whatever your thing is, or play pickleball or just going for like going sightseeing, right? You're walking all day. And so there's a lot of and cooking together is really a romantic thing to do. And you are looking for good health in a woman and she's looking for that no six pack needed. Like, I mean, genetically, there's a lot of us that just, it's just never going to happen. Right. But she just wants you to be able to keep up with her and she wants you to live a long time so she can love on you a long time. And really, that's just where she's coming from. It's not, certainly she's looking for this height, weight. It's not that scientific. She just wants you to love life. And that comes from good health, mental health, physical health. Yeah.
So you bring up a really great point there. Kind of towards the end of that statement is, you know, looking for a certain height, certain weight, certain
Hmm.
physical features, which are important to some people. Some people it's not, I can't do without these things. That's fine.
Right.
What do you say to the guys who they see on the internet, let's say they're on Instagram or YouTube or whatever, and they're looking and they're like, you know, looking at girls' comments about he's got to be 6 foot, he's got to have, you know, the 6 foot, 6 figures, 6 inches, things
Yeah.
that women
Yeah.
say a lot. Like, what do you say to guys who have to see this constantly? Because
Hmm.
it has to take a toll on the mental health. And like you said at the beginning of the podcast, there's plenty of awesome dudes that are out there just kind of sitting on the sidelines, maybe
Hmm.
because they think that they see what women
Hmm.
say or what potential partners say, and then they feel like they have to have that, and then they don't. It makes it increasingly difficult to approach a woman.
Yes. Right. That's all true. And it's equally true on the woman's side. So we have this battle of like just superficial. I think it's more common when, like 35 and younger. I just think because they're still assuming there's this big pool they can pick from and just write down, here are the 10 physical things I want. And I think part of it is the women are hearing that same thing too. An older man wants to date someone 15, 20 years, 30 years younger, so they feel like, well, then I'm going to do it too. But really it's kind of where you're at in your mind space with what you want. So really, what I try to do is help the guys from their point of view. What are you looking for? Do you find yourself being really particular about body shape or perceived fitness or height, things like that? Age, age I think is the biggest one, because if we can work on it from just adjusting their love goggles, I think that then builds their confidence to like widen their scope of who they're interested in. Because if you're looking for love, if you're looking for a long-term relationship, that has nothing to do with height, eye color, long hair, short hair. And really, most people think they're young for their age, right? And so if someone older approaches me, for example, well, yeah, you're young for your age, I'm young for my age, the math still works out the same. So I just think there's so many just artificial notions just dancing around in people's minds. And so it's really easy when you look at a profile too to just go, nope, nope. I mean, right? It's the paradox of choice and just having too many options and the constant feed of more options gets confusing too. So all those things kind of go into confusion and not giving enough people a chance. But here's the truth. If you're out in public, right, it's really intimidating to approach a woman. And I mean, like 9.5 men that I ask out of 10, are you going to approach a woman? Are hell no. Because it's too intimidating and I don't want to be creepy is what everyone says. I don't want to be creepy. Well, you're not creepy, so it's not going to come off as creepy. If you had a legit question, you're trying to figure out what kind of apple makes great pie, and you approach a woman and you ask that, is she going to think you're, it's an actual question. Like, but if you like feel attraction towards someone, now you're starting to get caught up in your own thoughts instead of just going up and making small talk or asking a question, asking for advice. But you also see those couples walking around that you're like, how did he get her? Or they're such an odd match, or how did that happen? Because he talked to her. He was the one guy the entire night that went up and spoke to her. And I can't tell you, besides safety, the other thing that a woman's looking for, the second biggest thing, is confidence. So attractive, so alluring. So if you're shorter than her, or you don't perceive yourself to be handsome enough to attract a woman like that, she is just so caught off guard that you had the courage to go up to her and talk to her. She's like kind of just going to be stunned and not know what to say. So don't take that as rejection. She's legit going to be stunned that you spoke to her and be so tickled and flattered and just mesmerized by the fact that you did it. It's so rare now that really, if you can do it with, and there's ways that you can practice. This is one of the things I teach too, right? You can build up that confidence because confidence just comes from repetition. And there's other ways to practice without walking up to 10 beautiful women before you feel confident, because you will get rejected. Rejection is just part of the game. I mean, we are
Sure.
all rejecting, all of us are reject. It's just part of life, right? And so I think, that's just something to keep in mind is you're going to be the rare gem that comes up to her. And then you could be that guy. You're the guy that has the most beautiful woman in a room. And she's just excited that someone approached her. Or you approach a woman because you have all these intellectual, concepts in common. You both love to be adventurous. You're both outdoors. So look at beliefs, values, and hobbies when you're considering who to date, because those are the things that make it magical and sustainable and make you a good match. Because, I mean, her hair has nothing to do with whether you could make it 50 years.
Right. So you bring up a lot of great points in that kind of conversation piece. And I think that even not so much with Men's Health Unscripted, it hasn't been something that we've really seen a lot, but it just being a man, I've dated. Um, and I think that it's easy at times to talk yourself out of approaching a woman. And
Mhm.
it's probably now with all the online dating, I've never really been a huge fan of it. Just there's catfishes, there's all kind of stuff going on there. I've never really been a huge fan of it. I met my current girlfriend in public, so I've always been like I like to talk to somebody, and I think that the text, like, you have to be good at texting and all this
Mhm.
other stuff, which like I'm not really, but I'm better in person, and I know that about myself. And
Mhm.
even before I met my girlfriend, like, for years, there would be times where I see a nice looking girl and I'm like, hmm. And I think a lot of other guys feel that way, and they just feel like,
Sure.
well, they do you feel like it's the fear of rejection? Do you feel like it's something else that guys are telling themselves that hold them back from even approaching and just saying, "Hey, how you doing?" I mean, to start the conversation is probably the hardest part, right?
Right. Right. Well, I think absolutely fear of rejection is the number one thing, right? Because you take it personally. But the truth is, when she rejects you, she doesn't know you. So it isn't, but it feels like, oh, she just stabbed me in the heart. Um, but
Probably
you're
because
not
you know you,
rejecting.
right?
Well, yeah, because when you reject someone, right, anyone that's dating are rejecting loads of people too. And so, when you do it, it's not personal, but it's hard to reassure yourself when someone does it to you, it's not personal, right? They're too
Sure.
far away, or their children are too young, or they don't want children, or they have 50 pets, or whatever the reason is. But it absolutely, it's rejection, but also just maybe not knowing what to say, feeling out of practice, and guys not giving themselves enough credit for the people they do talk to all day. Right. So even if you're a work at home person, you're still probably talking with people a lot on the telephone and you're really confident in your work. How did you get there? Right. It was repetition, practice, learning, taking the time, being intentional about it, and wanting to be successful at it. So you just kept, plugging away. And I think all those things are swimming around, in someone's mind. And so much so that even if a woman flirts with you or lingers by you or comes to stand by you at the bar when you're both getting a drink or lingers near you at live music, you don't notice because you're so in your head. Women could be flirting with you, but you're not picking up on it. Right? Though that's a woman trying to get your attention without her wanting to step into the masculine role. She wants to stay in that feminine role. And so she's giving you the chance, the equivalent of dropping the handkerchief,
Hmm.
so many years ago. It's the same thing. And then he picks it up and he gives it to her, or she asks him a question and makes small talk. If a woman does approach you and starts talking to you, making small talk, join in. That could be her way of just asking for your advice, like we were talking about with apples in the grocery store, but it could also be her flirting with you. Just make conversation. And if it doesn't go anywhere now, you're more confident the next time you talk to a woman because you're getting more practice. It could be with a clerk, a neighbor, your family. And yes, go out on blind dates. They're great practice. And the people getting you together for some reason think that you would hit it off. You feel free though to say the disclaimer. If this doesn't work out, you guys are okay, right? Like make sure they take that oath.
Right.
Cool if this doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. Yeah, and
Yeah.
absolutely go. Why not? You don't have to go out for a gourmet meal. Go out for coffee. Go out
Yeah.
for ice cream.
I think
Yeah.
coffee is a great date, just because it's low investment. You have
Mhm.
time to discuss whatever you need to discuss to kind of break down the barriers of that first
Mhm.
date. I think that so many guys put a lot of focus on, oh, I've got to take this person out to a nice meal,
Right.
or I have to do XYZ in order to be considered an effective suitor.
Mhm.
I think
Right.
more times than not, I think most people like coffee. And
Mhm.
I worked at a coffee shop for a long time, and I've seen plenty of people come through and bring like multiple dates to the same coffee shop.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great idea just because it's,
Mhm.
again, low investment, but you can
Yeah.
really optimize your time. You have coffee shops are generally like pretty quiet, studious places. You could go sit outside. And so
Mhm.
being able to do those things, you're kind of able to crack a lot of barriers too. And I think coffee is something that a lot of people bond over. And most places have tea too if you're not into it. But
Mhm.
I think that's just like
Right.
logistics at that point. But some of those lower investment dates, even going to a park and kind of just hanging out or doing something like that, I think
Mhm.
is the best way to kind of lead into, okay, now I can put a little bit more
Right.
investment into a date because I'm a little bit more invested and they seem interested. I know a lot of guys are probably like, man, I just spent $200 on dinner and like got ghosted.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
Well,
like you're
and
out,
let's say that you have been chatting on the phone a lot. You've been, which again, you have to be cautious of because if you just keep talking on the phone and don't ask her out, she's wondering, are you married? What's up? Why are we not progressing? But let's say you've worked with someone for years and it's time for a date. You're really excited. Then go out for drinks and an appetizer then so you can linger longer in a restaurant. You don't feel, a coffee shop sends the message, this is going to be short. We're going to get to know each other. This is more of a meet and greet. And that's why I like that too, or a smoothie or ice cream or whatever. But if you feel like you want it to be longer, but don't want the pressure to be there, then do something like go to a wine bar or a quieter pub and get appetizers and, pick something unique if you want, like a wine bar that's more, maybe interesting, add some more flavor to the date, but it lets you linger longer because you want to spend more time with her. But really, the point of a first date is just to decide, do I want a second date? That's it.
Right.
If she's a maybe, or you have all these things in common, but you're not sure about your attraction, go out again. Because the things that are most attraction grows with time, we all know that, right? We all like get more and more and more attracted to our someone the more we know about them and more time we spend. Keep going until she's a no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
And because what we talked about before with the masculine and feminine energy, if you accidentally come in with too much feminine energy on, date number 2 gives you a chance to like sit in the car, take some deep breaths, like get into the true you. She wants to get to know the real you, not what you were just doing at work, like that stuff that you carry around. Like try to unload it all in the car before you go in so she can really see who you are. And if you forget, I've forgotten a million times, the guys are like, oh, she's too much for me. Well, yeah, because I've been a badass all day, but I don't want to be with you. I forgot. Like I forgot to like unleash all that before I walked into the date. So you can tell when you've done it. And the date number 2 gives you a chance to like take some deep breaths and walk in with the true you coming forward so she can feel who you are.
Oh yeah, I definitely feel like my girlfriend's an attorney. I'm a pharmacist and I'm like more on the healthcare advocacy side. And I know some days I just like I come home fired up just because I've been
Yeah.
fired up all day. I've got clients that really need my help and I'm fighting for them. Girlfriend's got clients that need her help. I mean, she's keeping them out of jail for whatever reason, and sometimes we both come home, we're fired up and we just look at each other and we're like, oh, it's been that day. Not arguing or anything,
Right.
but we're just like, yeah,
Yeah.
ready to
Yeah.
go. And it is important to take those deep breaths to reset yourself and come back home and kind of reassert like what the roles are. And there might be
Right.
some days
Right.
like, I don't feel like doing this. And that's fine too. And I think with your partner and them understanding you, it's a little easier to kind of set those boundaries, which kind of brings me to my next question is we have a lot of guys that have asked us. My girlfriend encourages me to be more vulnerable. Now
Mhm.
I've become more vulnerable. I've opened up, but now we're in an argument and all of these things I've disclosed that are very personal and deep to me are now being used against me. In your mind, is there a way to kind of get away from that before, stop it before it starts? Maybe you don't know it's going to happen until it happens. And then, what do you do after? So, I
Right.
mean, I think there's a few scenarios we can discuss here, but
Right.
I'd like to get your take on that.
I think it's as much as you feel comfortable, it's important to be vulnerable pretty much right away, just because she wants to feel like you want to get to know her, but she wants to get to know you too. So just letting her in little bit by little bit. And I never advise like on a first, second, or third date talking about why your biggest relationship broke up or trauma in your family. But if she asks, because a lot of people just say, tell me, why your marriage broke up or whatever. Just have like two or three sentences prepared and then change the subject and move on to just something more lighthearted and playful. And because you're not obligated to answer, it's just that um that's a really heavy question and that's a really heavy answer. And so that's appropriate to save it for later. So you can tell her like the big reason and then just move on, so the date can get back on a more otherwise you guys could get into stories and then, the date just takes a negative turn and you're just both deflated at the end and then neither one of you want to say. Yes. So that's a dating scenario. So as you move on, you're just learning more and more. So as you become vulnerable with each other, that's how you discover red flags, though. That's how you discover deal breakers. And so be thankful for those conversations because it's so revealing about not just you, but her too. So, one of the things that I'm like right out of the gate, like, I mean, today, like, I would like you to do this no matter if you're in a relationship, single, not wanting to date, write down your deal breakers because they're going to be different than the ones you wrote when you were 23, right? Whatever age you're at, they progress into, just you just realize things about yourself that are priorities. Make your list of deal breakers. So by definition, any woman you meet, you're just dating, you're madly in love. If she has one of these things, it's finally revealed itself, it's over. So be really mindful of what you put on this list. This is something that you're going to look at every few dates. And then once you're in a committed relationship, you're going to look at it once a month. So you catch it so that you're not 3 years into it like I was with, four crying children and trying to save someone's life. And, when you knew it a year earlier, that's what I really want to do is save you guys so much time and money getting so further along because love isn't enough to sustain a relationship. It's just not. That's like one of life's most awful, horrid lessons. Okay, the second thing you're going to do is you're going to make a needs list. This is what I need out of a relationship. Again, you're going to look at the same list every few dates if you find someone. And then once you're in a relationship, once a month. Because if she's not providing, no one's perfect. We're all human beings. But if she's not providing half of what you need, then you need to sit down and you're going to really have a think about that. Is this right for me? But also, is this right for her? Because we're so far out of alignment, even though we're in love. Like, what is this something we want to keep going? Because the more time you spend, the more you get closer to friends, family, potentially children, and you get more enmeshed, and it's really difficult to break up. So those two lists are going to save your life. And then if you get into a difficult conversation, like maybe she doesn't use any of your vulnerabilities against you until it's a big trigger, it's a big fight, and you triggered her, and this is how she responds. So the two things that you want to happen is maybe you guys need to just take a time out so she can just have a sec to gather herself, right? But you want to address two things. You want to address the trigger because what was it? It's something really, if she just goes off, that is something really big for her. You want to know what that is. You want to understand it. The second thing is you played dirty. What happened? Like you came at me. What was that all about? Like we need to, like, you broke our trust, you broke our agreement, whether it's written or unwritten, stated, unstated, like that's just our deal that we're not going to use our, vulnerable parts against each other. So tell me more about why that happened, why you went there, and then how can we do this differently going forward? If she keeps up with the pattern, though, she's showing you who she is, how she communicates, and then you've got a big decision to make. And of course, you can go to counseling and figure this out, or go to a coach and figure this out, because you can learn how to communicate and what to do with your feelings. But if she doesn't want to, like in my situation, that's not safe for anybody to be in that kind of relationship. It's time to go. Yeah, and I'm always honest with people. Like they ask me what my thoughts are. Like, yeah, that's just not going to go anywhere. You're going to be constantly put in that source of pain. Yeah, unless she wants to work on it.
Yeah, a lot of those things are some very difficult situations and decisions to make. And I think that it can save a lot of grief and mental health issues. It sucks to break up, but sometimes it's for the best, and that's the realistic part of the situation. So when you do
It's a
have
lot
a
more to feel like you're in jail.
right, no, you're
You're
right.
trapped in something. So even though it's agony to end it, right? And you might have like really like a not good ending. It's good for her too. Think of it that way. It's not only good for you, it's good for her too, because you're not her person.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's a good point as well, just because the longer and longer you drag it out, there's more and more layers that get added in, which makes it
Yeah.
harder and harder to kind of dissociate from it.
Right.
So when you do, I think the list component that you brought up is really important,
Yeah.
because when you're in love, you can really overlook a lot of the red flags. You can see, I mean, they can be slapping you right in the face and you're like, oh man, this is great.
Right.
Whether it's like, the interaction and the romance and the passion and all that stuff is like really good. And you can just look past a lot of the things that after a lot of those kind of settle down, now they're glaring you in the face and you're saying, oh man, this is this is tough. Like why didn't I
Right.
think about this before? But you had the opportunity, right? But it's just
Right.
all these other things were kind of taking control. So I really do like making a list of things that you need and red flags. What about making a list of things that you're willing to compromise on, as far as like what do you, I guess the best way to put it is like, what I think making a list of what you're really good at, and the high qualities that you can offer to a relationship are important as
Yes.
well. So, do you encourage any of your clients to do that as well? Is that, where does that fall in the list of
That's
things to
another
do?
conscious dating activity. Yes, because she's going to, not in so many words, she's going to try to figure that out and ask you and learn those things. Because again, she's assessing for safety, confidence, and like 11 other things. But she's really trying to just feel out what you have to offer, because the way you walk and the way you carry yourself and the way you handle things says so much about how you feel about yourself. And that's why taking the time for these practices is just to be conscious and mindful where, like, if you're present, you're not going to ever say to yourself, oh man, I let that go a year too long. I let that go 6 months too long. So it's not that I want you to come out of that delicious romantic fog that we all crave and want to be in. Like, I'm talking like 10 minutes, like sit down just every few dates for 10 minutes and then once a month for maybe 20 minutes, and really think about it for both your benefits and then all the other people that now are involved in your relationship. So you can totally be caught up in that delicious, midst that you're in, and take care of the relationship and you while you're at it. Yeah, definitely. So
Very good.
making that list, you have a 45% chance more of internalizing and remembering things that you write down. That's why I'm not saying do this on your phone or do this while you're distracted or you're in the car reciting your best qualities. It's really is important to physically write it down, because you need to know what you have to offer. That's going to make you feel amazing. And if it's tough for you to come up with that list, think about, what do you get complimented on your eval at work? What do your friends say about you? When people introduce you, they're saying wonderful things about you. What does your family say about you? Um, and I think, my being a woman is a true advantage in this. Like, I wouldn't go to a woman and ask how to get a man. Right? I mean, I think it's really important to see like the other side of, the equation with things like this. Like, I don't hear any other dating coach talking about these really life-changing activities. I mean, this is what's going to save your sanity at the end. Is you're not going to say, if you use these practices, "Ugh, why did we get married? How did we end up together? How did we get here?" You're going to have all the random arguments that people have in a relationship, because we're all human beings, and the conflict is
Yeah, it happens.
healthy and normal and good and can actually bring you closer. So I love your idea. Yes, absolutely. Every guy should be doing that, because you need to know what you have to offer so that you're more discerning then in who you're choosing, like who to go out with. And you can pick up on things more. And when you establish these new habits, like even on the telephone, like never go out with somebody without a phone call. Always, always get them on a phone call just to break the ice. And you can spot um something you were not willing to contend with on the telephone sometimes. And that
Sure.
saves the whole date.
Right. It
Yeah.
saves a lot of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I kind of felt really good about, talking about making a list of all the things that you're really good at, just because I think a lot of guys have issues. It's probably a different conversation for a different day, but we can touch on it. Is a lot of guys, I think, have trouble with accepting compliments.
Hmm.
And a lot of times somebody would tell you, oh, nice shirt, and you're like, oh, thanks, like it was on sale, and you don't realize it, but that's kind of dismissive to their compliment.
Right.
And I think establishing the list of the things that you're good at or that you enjoy or that you bring to the table are really important, because it gives you the ability to compliment yourself, which is important. It's a form of self-love.
Hmm.
And then at the same time, you're able to now, when you go on a date and someone asks you, hey, what's your best quality? What do you think that you bring to the table? Maybe not so many words, but in that way, you're able to confidently say, oh, I'm really good at blah, blah, blah. I'm really good at XYZ.
Right.
And then it also opens you up for receiving compliments and not dismissing them. And you say, oh, yeah, thank you. And you take
Hmm.
it. And I think that a lot
Yes.
of guys have trouble with that. We're kind of almost subconsciously taught, compliments aren't for you, compliments are more for women or kids or whatever the case is. And I think that's a,
Right.
a huge hurdle a lot of guys need to get over.
Right. Well, and it really is important to say to yourself, well done, good job. I took a risk today. I got rejected, but look at what I did. Like that was a really big thing for me. And you could even go into difficult situations with the reward, the triumph being I did it anyway, even though I felt so uncomfortable, and getting more comfortable being uncomfortable, like just sitting in it. Yep, I'm nervous. Yep, you were for all those jobs that you interviewed for, and you got the job at the end of the day, and you did it anyway. So there's so many examples in your life of what you're good at and risks you've taken, and you did have the courage to follow through and do it anyway. And then too, you might think to yourself, man, I need to be more expressive. I need to share more. I need to talk more. And then you can practice on your neighbors, your friends, your kids, people at work, right? You don't have to practice all these skills on women, practice them on everyone else. And then once you essablish that habit, that practice, then you have one more thing to add to your list. So you all have personal goals about, man, I wish I was better at this, or wish I would. So do it. That can be one thing to really elevate your mood, and just to try something new, like take up pickleball. I don't know how to play, but everyone else seems to be playing it. So like
Right.
it must be a blast. So just go play. Yeah, just figure it out. But though
I
all
love that.
those things will build your confidence, your mood, and elevate you, because you could meet a woman anywhere. And I mean anywhere. I mean, like, couples have met at the gas station, in the Costco line. I mean, lots of people have paired up in the craziest ways. So make sure, and this is part of conscious dating too, you sit in the car and you put your masculine energy on everywhere, before you go into the store, before you go into the gym, before you go into any kind of situation, because when you're open, she'll see you. But if you're closed, I'm busy, right? You can read other people, like they're busy, she doesn't want to be talked to. So you don't. But if you're open and she wants to talk to you, she might. Or you'll just get all this positive affirm people will smile at you, people will engage with you, chat with you, like you'll feel it. When you're open, yeah, people engage with you so much more. So as much as you can, if you're open to meeting someone right now, then yeah,
Go
make
it,
that
speak
make
it.
that a practice.
Sure. I really love that. And that kind of works for many things in life, is being able to
Hmm.
kind of, before you start walking in those shoes, to be able to verbalize it, articulate it, and really kind of set an intention for what you want is
Right.
very important.
Yeah,
So
even making
yeah.
friends.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So we recently did a podcast with an attorney, and we talked about family law. We had some questions from some of our audience about what to do when you have kids, going through a divorce, going through a breakup, and how you navigate that situation. And I'm glad you're here, because we won't talk about the legal end of it because we already covered it. But how do you start dating if you have kids? The other
Hmm.
person might not, or if they do, then now you have two sets of kids that, hopefully
Yep.
they get along, right? Or dating someone else that has kids and you don't have kids. I know that there's a lot of scenarios there, but are there any like good kind of fast tips or quick and dirty to kind be able to discuss those things effectively and kind of move forward. Because now there's exes involved, and there's a
Right.
lot more moving parts than just the kids. So any
Absolutely.
any
Yeah.
information on that you care to discuss?
There's a lot of dynamics there, and it can feel so complicated. So the first thing, and feel free to ask about this right away, like ask about children's ages. A lot of times people don't put that in their profile. I say put it in. I mean, if you're whatever age your kids are, it's not revealing anything really personal, but it helps the other person so that you're not engaging in weeks of conversation with someone and they say, oh my gosh, your kids are too old, too young, too what, um, so that can help you a lot. But then too, feel free to ask about what days they have their children on, because there's been many times where the schedules just are opposite, and you there's not one day that you all could see each other. And it's not always easy to change visitation. What I found that week on, week off is the most difficult for people, because then you're going a full week without your bowling league, a full week without taking a class, a full week without, or you've got to get a sitter, right? So I find that like every other weekend with some days during the week are just a lot easier. So you can schedule in all those things that bring your life balance, and you don't have to miss your kids for so long either. And um it's less transitions for your kids. I think that's why people do it, but it's really hard to date then. You're like full on off, full on like with your children and your person. So I mean, if you're to the point where you ever renegotiate your visitation and you just find that too binding, I mean, just bring that conversation up with your kid's mom, because it really could be for her too. That's really just too tough. And
Sure.
just be
And
open to, like, people have different challenges and situations with your children, so you just need to talk about it, openly. But again, if you can't ever see each other, then yeah, I don't know how you'd make that work.
yeah, that makes it really tough. I know that when my girlfriend and I first started dating, I think on the second date we addressed the kid situation and we got it like out of the way. Our beliefs on it, our everything. We
Mhm.
just kind of talked about it,
Yeah.
and just because it's a really important part of somebody's life. I mean, some people
Mhm.
want kids, some people don't. And imagine meeting somebody who you're madly in love with, and then you find out that they don't want kids, but you do. And that can be
Right.
devastating, or,
Yes.
vice versa. So I think that conversation is one that you have to avoid thinking of it as being creepy. You're looking, if you're dating to date long term, I think that that's an important
Mhm.
question to ask pretty soon in. And then if you do
It
have
is.
kids, to disclose that up front. Years and years ago, I was in my 20s, and I was dating this girl. I think we went on like 5 or 6 dates. We were dating for a couple months before she told me she had kids.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, what?
And yeah.
What?
And
Whoa.
I was like a little bit younger and naive and didn't kind of, there, looking back on it, you're like, well, she definitely did, but you just kind of don't see it right away. And
Right.
I think she was younger when she had them. So, they were like a little bit older, and dad lived out of state. So they would go spend some time with dad out of state. So it was like these
Mhm.
windows of time that she didn't really have kids or had them with her. And she kind of felt like, well, I don't really have to disclose this. And then all of a sudden it was like, we're like a couple months in. She's like, oh yeah, I got to get my kids. I'm like, wait, what? Right.
Wow.
Um,
Oh, that
and
didn't feel good.
so it was awkward to say the least. And it kind of turned into like, I hope you like kids because I have some. And I was like, I don't dislike them, but I don't think I'm ready for this. Right. And so
Right.
I think that that's where it kind of took a turn. And so I think the things that are very important to you in life, I think that you should probably
Mhm.
disclose them up front. If you're looking to maintain a long-term relationship, I think
Mhm.
those are really important.
Well, and I mean, try not to make assumptions. We all do it, but really try to catch it. That's why that deal breakers list is so important. Make sure that you can, things like children, that's a yes or no question, right? So you want to be able to get those things out of the way right away. Do you want to have kids? Do you want more kids? I mean, kids and people into their 50s still want children. And so you've got to ask. Don't assume because, you know, she's 42 that she doesn't want more kids. She might.
Right.
So feel free to just ask. And anybody that responds negatively to us, that's a basic standard question like that. Then you've got to wonder what their intentions are. Does she also want a long-term relationship? Because she would anticipate that question actually, right? Or so if you're wondering if a question is too intimate or too creepy, like think about just the phrasing, like where do you work versus what do you do, or what do you love about your job? She's thinking he wants my work address. I'm feeling really suspicious right now, so alarm bells are going off. Or where do your children go to school? More
Right.
alarm bells. You're asking for, I mean, right? You can't those so, but ask what grades they're in, right? Feel free. I mean, so just think about the phrasing so that you're not, what neighborhood do you live in? Ask what like if you're in a metropolitan area, you could ask like what part of town are you in? Right? But if you're in a small town, you really can't ask anything because whatever you say is going to give it
Right.
whatever her answer is going to give it away. So just be cautious because she really is trying to feel safe with you.
Sure.
Yeah. So the kid thing is really complex. When do you tell them? How much do you tell them? When do you introduce, not introduce? Affection is another, big thing that can just throw everything off. Getting intimate too early just has an artificial sense of closeness. Meeting people's kids too soon again can really generate an artificial sense of closeness that's not real yet. You know, things just take time. And that's again being conscious while you're doing it. So I have a wedding this weekend and we've had 2 dates. Should I take her? No. I have a funeral. We've been out a couple of times. Should I take her? No. Those are really intimate. She's going to get introduced to a million people. Like those are things saved for exclusivity. And don't
Sure.
assume you're exclusive either. If you haven't actually said the words, I want you to be mine, I'd love you to be my girlfriend, let's be a couple, you're not. You're not.
I like
It
that.
has to be said out loud.
Are
Yeah.
there any good ways to approach that? I mean, is it just like, hey, dive in head first and let your partner know that that's what you want?
If you already know that you're like, you have a million different ways that you connect and you're crazy about her and you do want to be exclusive with her, make it a moment, make it special. Sit her down and ask her. It's not just, hey, are you my girlfriend? No, you ask her. Make a romantic gesture. Um, ask her at dinner, or ask her, when you're sitting together, eye contact, and make it a sincere moment so she knows that you really mean it. It's just like I love you. If you tell a woman within the first 2 weeks, because men fall in love more quickly than women do statistically, then just, if you say it within the first 2 weeks, she's not going to believe you. And then after that, though, let's say you wait a month and you say it, she doesn't say it back. It's just she needs more time. 6 months later, if she's still not saying it back, she's probably not going to get there. She just is in a different place, or she just doesn't have the capacity for love yet. Yeah.
Sure.
So again, that's another thing once you get into the relationship part that we can talk about, because I mean, how do you know when to break up? She's still not saying it back, but I see all these other signs, but she's still, gets
Right.
really confusing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's definitely something worth having a conversation over and just being honest. I think it's definitely a tough conversation, I'm sure, but
Mhm.
I think that honesty probably will take you a lot further than just sitting
Yeah.
around and waiting for them to make the decision because they might not. And it's not like you're
Right.
forcing anybody, right? It's just saying,
Yep.
like, hey, I love you. I care about you. I know you care about me, but do you feel as strongly? And then maybe what are some barriers to that? Even because you
Yes.
can address that. And if it's something like, well, hey,
Well,
I've had this issue in the past, um, and you might be experienced in that situation. So you can definitely say,
right.
well, actually, I have experience with this. Maybe we can talk about it. And I think there's a lot of ways to discuss it, but just kind of getting it out there, in a private setting where things can
Yeah.
be discussed appropriately. I think that's really, really important.
And you can work through it. Like, you could just say, where do you see us going? Or how do you view our relationship? And then if she's just can't really answer, then look for the other red flags. There's other signs that you might be able to see that kind of add up to the picture. If she's not able to verbalize it, like doesn't want to introduce you to anyone, or is willing to be exclusive but not close to you, if that makes sense. Like you don't feel like you're in a relationship even though you're exclusive. It just still feels like dating land. Yeah, so yeah, it can get murky and confusing for sure.
Sure. So, Tamara, it's been really awesome talking to you. I'd like to kind of just go over, maybe our audience has never experienced a dating coach or what the benefits can be. I'm sure some people approach you and you're like, whatever. Some people probably, I'm sure a lot of your clients get a lot of benefit out of it. And I really love your page.
Mhm.
So, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about what a maybe a first meeting with you would be like, or maybe just in general, like what a dating coach meeting maybe should look like? Or I know it's hard to say what all dating coaches are like, but what are
Right.
some good and bad, maybe some things that in your opinion might show that they're an effective coach or an ineffective
Mm.
coach? It's just, generally we can
Yeah.
cover those things just so our audience has a better idea of what it entails.
It is hard to pick a coach because there's quite a few to choose from. And not all people like on Instagram are offering services. So look into that. Do they offer anything that I can participate in? I think one of the big things you want to look at is, do I like them? Do I like their information? Do I like their perspective, where they're coming from? Can they relate to me? I mean, that's part of the reason I love doing this is I've been through a lot of similar things. I mean, a lot of men have been through exactly what I went through, and putting yourself out there and starting over and all that. So, can they relate to me? Do they really get where I'm coming from? Another thing to consider are their credentials. Do they have any? I mean, some coaches don't. I mean, I have a master's in social work and counseling, and I'm a mastery level coach. So, I think that's important too, because you want to have those shared experiences, but you want to know that they have something to offer that's proven, right? That actually works, because you want to get from point A to point B. If you're looking for a coach, you want progress. Another thing is, do they offer what I want? So is it in a form that I want? Like maybe you want to just do study, you want a course that you can do it at your own pace, like just a self-study course. Or maybe you want to meet with someone and no study course. Maybe you want to just meet with someone for an hour. So I offer that full spectrum, like an hour to 3 months to lifetime access to like an actual program I have. So you always have access to me. But then we can talk for an hour and like resolve these three questions that you have in your current relationship in your love life right now. And then call me back 3 months from now. Or when you're ready to get engaged, you're like, how do I make this special? Or, oh my gosh, we're married and we just can't get past this thing. Or how do we talk about money before we get married? Like actually talk about it. And that's another reason that you need someone with experience too. So do they have any experience? And do you kind of like jibe with the information that they offer in their perspective? Because really that's what they're going to be teaching you, is kind of what you can already get a sense of online. That's kind of a further deeper dive. So, and their pricing might be important to you too, or amount of time. So a first session could be, really, I leave it wide open. What do you want to we always open with, would you like to discuss today? What's your goal? Like at the end of the session, what do you hope that we accomplish, so that within that hour we can actually address that. And if it's something that like you want to work through slowly, or you want to work on your dating profile, or you want to work on those pre-relationship partnership conversations, those are big. I mean, that's going to take more than an hour. So that's why I just have all the options, so that you can pick what suits you at the time. Maybe we spend 3 months once a week together, but then you don't need anything for 3 more months, or we get into something with the kids comes up and then you need an hour. And so I just leave it flexible. So that might make it easier on you too, is just finding somebody with the type of options that you want, that just work for you right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's got to jive with what you want and what your goals are. So I
Hmm.
definitely appreciate that. And Tamara, it's been awesome talking to you. I've definitely learned a lot, and I'm sure our audience will too. If our audience wants to get a hold of you or see some of your content, maybe some of your dating tips, which are awesome on Instagram, where can they get a hold of you? Website? socials, all that good stuff.
So on Instagram, you can find me at Tamara True Connection, on Facebook at Tamara TC for True Connection. And then my website is trueconnection.coach, COACH. Yeah, I would love to help you find her sooner than later so you can get off the bench if you're not finding the kind of woman that you want to date. Yeah, you deserve to have that relationship that you really want.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to discuss all of these dating tips with our audience. And hopefully we can talk again soon.
I'd love that. Thanks for having me, Patrick. That was so fun.